voracity of economic growth, blah, 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 is moving far too quickly.
Where the hell am I going? You know, I mean, it forces all of us to ask that question, because I think most of us are running to stand still in the early 21st century. You know, we really do not take time out to ask ourselves, you know, where we're going or why we're going there.
OK Computer was released on June 16, 1997. Its critical reception was unprecedented and remains almost unrivalled in modern music.
I mean, I think from the point of view of someone who'd been writing about music for, I don't know how long I'd been, you know, 15, almost 20 years maybe, you know, I'd given up on the prospects of an album coming out that just totally blew you away.
The critical reception that OK Computer received when it came out in 1997 really was quite extraordinary, quite exceptional. It was instantly making people's critics' top 10, top 5 all-time lists or even higher.
The acclaim didn't surprise me, I have to say. I think like everybody, I mean, like everyone who reviewed it, you just had to you had to kind of bow down before it.
Radiohead toured OK Computer relentlessly and earned high praise as a live act. The record's success was sealed with the group's legendary performance at Glastonbury, 1997.
I think Glastonbury was probably quite an easy thing a hook to pin on the success of OK Computer. It was not an exemplary gig. It was going hideously wrong because the monitors weren't working, as is well documented, and it was just a Radiohead gig, and it happened to be at Glastonbury. Glastonbury's always a special gig, especially if you're headlining, because it's a bloody massive crowd. There's 200,000 people watching you, maybe more, you know, who knows who got in over the fences. And it's a defining moment. Bands like Pulp have gone on to say that they'll never, ever better that moment. But for Radiohead, you kind of think, yeah, that could only happen to Radiohead. It all went a bit wrong. It was one of the wet Glastonburys, which are always slightly more depressing because it's like the trenches. It's like wartime trenches at Glastonbury when it's wet. You kind of lose your mind. And everyone was kind of not quite, obviously if you're in the crowd you don't know what's going on. Radiohead are playing, the monitors aren't working, so what? You can hear it coming out the speakers. They just can't hear themselves, so that Tom can't hear his voice, you know, they can't hear the guitar parts or any of the instruments. It's just completely guesswork, if you like. But I think Tom called out, turn the lights on the audience or something, so if you like, the house lights were turned on and you could just see, or he could just see this massive sea of people. And it went from, it flipped. It went from being horrendous for them, not so horrendous for the crowd. It was a Radiohead gig. They were seeing a good enough gig, to being mind-blowing. It was adversity. It was triumph in the face of adversity. They just pulled it off. They just played. You know, the album had been pretty much circulating, I guess, for a month maybe. Yeah, or it was on the cusp of release, or people had it. So the songs were known, they were singing along, and everything started to work. There was a sense of elation in the band. You could see it was like, yeah, we did it. We triumphed. This could have been absolutely bloody awful, but we pulled it out of the bag. It was like a success, really.
Amongst all the praise and publicity surrounding the record, one key question kept on being raised. Is OK Computer a concept album? The argument was principally over whether or not the record was about the dehumanizing effects of modern culture.
In a sense, you could make anything a concept album just by putting the themes together. As I say, what I did with this album was try and look for linkages between the songs, setting out how some of the words in particular formed clusters of ideas. And yes, then one can end up with a particular set of obsessions that happen here. I don't think in the end that's enough to really make it as a concept album.
If you ask Tom York, is it a concept album, of course he would say no, because that very term probably sends shivers down his spine. And I mean, it's not a concept album in the sense that it is about any one subject, but it does feel like an album that takes you on a journey through, you know, 2 or 3 sort of key themes.
I do think it is a concept album in that it addresses across the songs essentially the existence of people nowadays in modern society and their struggles to come to terms with that.
The best rock music in many ways, I think, is about people trying to place themselves or deplace themselves or in the society they find themselves in or that they want to escape from. And I think OK Computer is very much like that. It's the sound of an alienated man, I think, who's looking around him and looking at other people, and it's the sound of a frightened person as well, actually. And I mean, there's a lot of fear in late 20th century, early 21st century culture, and OK Computer really does give off that. But I don't think it's a concept album in that A to Z kind of, you know, here is a narrative.
Since the record's release in 1997, it has gone on to top several polls and earn accolades from a wide spectrum of the music industry. It has even been referred to as the final classic record of the past millennium.
It became almost like an avant-garde band who were playing stadiums, and that was, for me, I didn't really think you could do that. That was possible, really, in rock music anymore.
They were trying to push things as far as they could, and I think they were honest about that. I think the emotions beneath the album are still really honest, even though there's a lot of technical things which, in the wrong hands, could be experiments in technical prowess, but I don't think that happens with OK Computer.
Almost like an album which in itself represents a whole culture that isn't really being emulated by any of their peers or contemporaries. You know, it's a sort of standalone voice, but an entirely appropriate one. You know, it's full, its rebelliousness, its disdainfulness, and there are precious few people, either kind of emulating those things or doing them in such a kind of rich and variegated way musically, doing it in such an intelligent way, that an album like OK Computer is like a counterculture in itself.